Hi everyone, I'm Hairizwan and welcome to another video on the GGG Cloud Singapore YouTube channel. So a few weeks back, there was this new feature that came along in the Cloud Run product, which is the capability to support WebSockets and gRPC streaming. I'm not sure if any of the other serverless products in the other clouds have such capabilities, but I do think that it's kind of nice that this particular capability is now available on Cloud Run. With the WebSocket support, that would mean that it's finally easier to support a particular use case that I faced previously. So a long time back, I created some dashboards using R Shiny library. The R Shiny library makes it pretty easy to create dashboards using the R programming language. So as you know, on the front end, you typically have to deal with JavaScript, correct? So now there's no need to jump back and forth between using the JavaScript and back to the data manipulation language here, which is R. So we can just maintain using the R language to create our dashboards. It's kind of convenient way to build such dashboards. So the thing about this R Shiny library is that it relies on WebSockets. Initially, this is not available when Cloud Run came out. I believe when Cloud Run first came out, it was just basic HTTPS connections, or you can trigger it via PubSub. But it's now nice that we can use this dashboard-like application that it relies on WebSockets, deploy it, and then only get charged when it's actually accessed by user. This is way better as compared to previous deployments where we may have to deploy it to a virtual machine and then we kind of have to remember to turn it off when it's no longer in use. Okay, so rather than having me continue rambling on and on about potential benefits of doing this, let me just quickly show a demo instead. We begin by first trying to understand what this R Shiny dashboard that we are trying to deploy is. So the first thing that we want to do would be to try to deploy it locally to see how it works and how it interacts. So as you see here, what we'll do is to run the Docker command, expose it on port 3838, which is kind of the default port that it hosts on, and we use the Docker image tag R Shiny. In this case, we use the version 4.0.0, and we'll skip the actual download. I mean, the download actually takes a while because the image is pretty huge, and then we'll have the image start running. As you can see, it's now listening on 3838. We'll go to localhost 3838 and then try to access the website here. And then as you see, this is the kind of the intro page of the Shiny server dashboard. So it's simple, and we haven't actually added any dashboards here. I mean, that's not the primary purpose of this video. It's mostly to showcase how we can deploy such R Shiny based applications. So to truly show that it's actually WebSocket based, what we can do is to go to developer tools and show this. So if what we'll do is wait for it to come out, and as you can see there is this thing called WebSocket connection. So if you are familiar with the WebSocket, you will see that the URI being used here, WS, kind of is indicative of this. So as a matter of trying to showcase more of this capability, this is a sample dashboard that you can potentially have. So if you build a proper R Shiny dashboard, this is what it'll probably look like. But in this case, this is some of the sample dashboards that is already kind of provided by within the image. So this kind of gives you an easy way to kind of interact with it. So let's stop running this. So what we'll now focus on would be to deploy it to Cloud Run. So there are a few steps that we will need to do. So the first thing that we'll need to do is to tag, so-called retag the image, so that you can point it to the Google Container Registry. So usually the URI for that will be gcr.io, and then we'll need to get the project ID name. So in this case, we'll paste it there. Then we'll append on the rocker / shiny 4.0.0. So just to show you where it is, container registry under images. So you'll see that the image is not exactly there. So once we tag it, then we can then push the retag image to our project. So later on, I'll probably show how it will look like on the container registry. So using this Docker push, I'm not going to showcase how to properly set it up here. If you want the proper instructions on how to set up the Docker push to the Google Container Registry, you can actually look up the Google documentation. I will leave a link to that in the description portion of this video. But yeah, so with that, we can now push the image to the container registry. And as you can see, the image is pretty large. So what we're going to do here would be to skip ahead. So hold on, let me skip ahead. And with that, we pushed. Yes. Okay, that would mean that we've pushed to the container registry. Just to show this, we can go to container registry, and then we can see that the rocker is kind of under a folder structure. So since we do rocker, then shiny, and then the actual image version, the 4.0.0. So that's how it will be kind of viewed as in the container registry. So now we have the image in container registry. So the reason why we needed to do this is because Cloud Run currently doesn't exactly support public images. You kind of have to get that image into the project. So previously you can, but I guess with all the Docker limitation coming in, maybe this is probably why they kind of insist that you host the image in your own container registry. So now we are in Cloud Run. What we can do, if we are doing it via UI, would be to create service, and then in this case, I'm going to pick Singapore because that's to kind of reduce latency. But any region is fine. The Google network, you can actually access the services with very little latency. So even if you have it in US, latency wise, it's not gonna be too large. Yeah. So we settle on the name, and then we now need to click on which image that we want to put into this Cloud Run service. And there we have it, 4.0.0 rocker shiny image. Before we continue on, we will need to properly adjust these settings. So as we remember earlier, the container port for this is 3838 and not the default 8080. Yes, and then after that would be to change the memory allocation. So seeing that this is R, it is quite memory intensive and quite CPU intensive. I mean, CPU is so that we can load it faster. We'll set the maximum request to 5 and number of instances to 5. with that, we can then configure how this service will be triggered. You're set to unauthenticated invocations in this case, and then allow all traffic. That will allow us to access it from the public, from anywhere essentially. This is kind of easier way to kind of access Cloud Run services. If you expose it to public, that kind of allows you to quickly test it out to make sure that there isn't any problems, etc. So there's the URL there. So each Cloud Run service will provide its own URL. So what we can do is copy, paste it, and we can access it. Seeing that it's on the server, what you'll need to do is to start the container. Sometimes you might have a longer time to start it. I think this is popularly known as the cold start problem, especially for serverless products, but as you can see, this is pretty fast. So we can interact with it, and as you can see there, the charts are kind of working. So this is kind of indicative that it actually works. WebSocket connection is alive. So if the web connection or on these charts are actually dead, what will happen is all the graphs will actually be grayed out. You won't be able to interact with the entire page. As you can see here, the page is actually interactive. So as you can see that this is it allows all unauthenticated users to actually access it. It's accessible by public, which may not be what you want here. So let's try to deploy it, but try to restrict it to a segment of users. So let's say if you want to only expose the dashboard to maybe to your company, like an internal dashboard, which is what you probably want most of the time. What we can do would be to deploy Cloud Run, but put it behind a CDN. So this is kind of how we do it. Behind the CDN, then what we can do after that would be to put IAP in front. So let me first focus on deploying the Cloud Run service. Use the same name as Shiny Dashboard. And then after that, select the same image, which is the R Shiny 4.0.0. So nothing too different as compared to the previous setting. We'll use the same settings as earlier, which is the 3838 container port. And then after that, shouldn't forget to alter the memory to 2 GB here. CPU allocation to 2 cores. And then maximum number of requests to, this is R Shine R, so we shouldn't have too many concurrent requests. Takes too much resources. And then this is the part that's actually different, which is to click on allow internal traffic and traffic from cloud load balancing, and not allow all traffic. The other authentication is the same, like we want to allow no authentication. Because if you do click the other option, you'll need to pass in some sort of authentication header with some kind of token, which we don't want to do from the browser. It doesn't make sense to do it from the browser. So now we have the service deployed. We can try to access it this time around. We can actually ignore this. First thing we copy, we'll need to reload the page. Just now the page was it hasn't been reloaded, so that's why it's no problem. But now if we try to access it, as you can see, forbidden. So we can't access it anymore. Don't forget, we now didn't allow access from the public. We only allow access from internal traffic as well as from the load balancer. So if you want to proceed on to try to deploy it and put the IAP protection, so it's IAP is Identity Access Proxy. That is kind of another service that Google kind of provides. So what we'll need to do would be to set up the load balancer. So we'll go to load balancing, and then we'll need to set up the whole shebang. So first we'll need to create load balancer. We'll need to set up our backends. So in this case, ours, it will be the HTTPS load balancing. I mean, we chose that because that's how we're going to interact with it. But secondly, is because this IAP product kind of requires us to use HTTPS based load balancer, not exactly TCP or etc. So let us create our backend service. So in this case, what we can do is select serverless network endpoint groups. We'll need to create that. We'll set that to HTTPS too, because as you know, Cloud Run kind of requires us to interact with it by HTTPS. So yeah, HTTPS there. We'll need to create it because we don't exactly have one. Okay, we have one there, but that is from an old experiment. So we can create another one here. We'll need to set it to Singapore because that's where we kind of set up the Cloud Run service. Let me append to there. Then click on Cloud Run. Click on the Cloud Run service that we deployed, and then after that we click Create. So that kind of creates the kind of the network endpoint group that connects to our Cloud Run service. You can think of it as just another proxy, because essentially Cloud Run and the load balancer actually kind of runs on different networks, so we kind of need to do this kind of weird janky workarounds. So yeah, with that, we set up the backend. We don't need to configure the host path any further. I mean, essentially what we want to do is access the R Shiny dashboard as it is. Front end wise, we'll need to set it up as well. We'll set it to HTTPS too. Set it to standard because we don't want to pay so much money here. So just create a new IP address. And here's the important bit, because we are trying to set up a HTTPS connection on our load balancer. We'll need to provide a domain. So in this case, I have a domain available. In your case, you can buy a domain before trying out. Buying domains is relatively okay. You can buy domains from Google itself. I hear that they already have a new Google product to actually buy DNS domains now. So with that, we'll just need to take a look at what we've configured, check that everything is okay, and then we'll just click on the advanced configuration to make sure, and then we'll just proceed on to click create. Okay, I forgot the load balancer name, and after that, one more check, click create, and with that, it is being created. So as you remember, the front end of the load balancer, we kind of need to put in our domain to create the HTTPS certificate, so that provisioning of that SSL cert actually takes a long time. Yeah, so there are a few things that we need to do. Would be to point our domain name to the address here. So what we need to do is get the IP address. I'm not going to show how I configure my that domain that I use here, which is horizon.info. I'm not going to show how to configure that. As you can see that we need to kind of configure our DNS to point to that IP address there, 35.213.173.143, and then port 443 because it's HTTPS. And as you can see there, the HTTPS cert is actually under the provisioning state. So sometimes this provisioning step actually takes like 10-15 minutes, very long time. Gonna skip ahead, and we're back. So now with our HTTPS cert is ready, we can now actually access the website. So now we have our R Shiny dashboards accessed via the load balancer, but that is not the end. Now we just want to do a couple of checks. But yeah, as I was mentioning just now, we wouldn't want to end there. What we're trying to do here would be to put some sort of identity checker to make sure that only certain people can access these dashboards. So the next bit would be to actually find the this service called the IAP, which is the Identity Access Proxy. I need to kind of find it here. Not sure where to find that window. And then let's see, where is it? I can potentially search for the Identity Access Proxy here, but yeah, I'm trying to show where we can find it from the main how to call it, the main menu. Okay, so it's under security. So security, and then there we have it, identity aware proxy. So we've already set up the load balancer. So as you can see, it's not exactly set up. Yeah. So all we need to do here would be to enable. But before we enable, one of the things that we kind of needed to do is to say who can access this dashboard. Inside the documentation, what is mentioned, that we need to add our user that we want to allow to have access this IAP secured web app user. We need to provide that role to the user mentioned here. So in this case, because I kind of only have one Gmail account, so I'll add my email account here as a test. We'll skip on the sending of notification email. If you click on that, what will happen is the user here, which is identified, which was me, I will just receive an email to say that I've been added to being able to access the IAP of this particular project. So I'll just need to turn it on, and with that, IAP is turned on. So the IAP itself, the usage of the IAP actually takes a while to get the configuration across. I've seen times where it takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So to kind of showcase this, we'll need to open incognito. And as you can see here, with a bit of cutting, we skip ahead a little bit, and you can see that if you try to access the website, we can't. We need to kind of log in first. But if we are in a logged-in browser, we can access it. So yeah, so we kind of protected our Shiny dashboards now. At least, like, you need to be at least logged in, and if I'm not wrong, you need to be of that specific Google user. So yeah, So with that, we kind of showcase the capabilities of utilizing Google Cloud Run and then protecting the Google Cloud Run resource with the Google Cloud Load Balancer, and then in front of the Google Cloud Load Balancer, we've put in front of it the IAP, which we use Google accounts to kind of allow only the authorized Google account users to access it. So with that said, if you find this video interesting, do leave a like. Then we'll provide more of such videos. So yeah, thank you.